All right, I'm here with Bobak Tavangar. He is the CEO of Brilliant Labs, a company creating cutting edge AR glasses. Their latest product is called Frame. Before Brilliant Labs, Bobak was at Apple and was a serial founder. Today, we're going to discuss Bobak's journey, AR tech, and more. How's it going, Bobak?
Hey, Nolan. Good to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you on. I've been really looking forward to this conversation with you. I'm a software guy partially because hardware is hard. So I have so much respect for people like you that pursue challenging problems to move tech forward, plus extra respect in my book for making Frame open source.
Right on. Yeah, we can, of course, go into this, why we decided to open source it and why that matters. But at the high level, we just felt it was the right thing to do with a new computing medium that in this day and age, the stakes are just too high for things to be kept within a black box and people just being the passive recipients of that. Yeah, open source is pretty fundamental to everything we do.
Definitely. I love that. Let's hear the story behind Brilliant Labs. How did you and your team get started on this journey and how the company evolved to what it is today from your first product, Monocle, to your latest Frame?
Yeah, we started Brilliant a few years back, timed right before the pandemic, which is the worst time to start a hardware company because all the factories shut. We couldn't be in the same place. Our team is pretty well distributed for the most part. So we had to find new ways of working, more effective ways of collaborating with each other, and still moving the product development process forward. So back then, we were really excited about a little clip-on AR device, something that is totally open source, fits in your pocket, let alone the palm of your hand, and just clips onto a pair of glasses. And that could be this interesting half step in the direction of giving you essential sensor technology aligned with line of sight to power a range of simple heads-up display and AI, especially computer vision type use cases. We got Monocle out in 2022. It was around that time, so just a few months earlier, that the GPT API was published. And over that year, all of us remember just things started to go nutty. And so now we're in the midst of this generative AI craze. And we felt like the timing, despite some of what happened early in the pandemic to really slow us down, the timing actually was fortuitous. And when we started working on Frame, we really had this vision in mind, no pun intended, that the key use cases, the things that would give devices like this purpose in your life would be allowing a powerful AI to see and hear, to understand everything that you're experiencing in that moment and generate some value add on top of that. Help give you some context, help guide you through a situation, help you read the room a little differently than your latent biological powers or knowledge and experience equip you to be able to do. That really was the set of use cases that we had in mind. And the beauty of keeping things open is that it's not relegated to what we ourselves can imagine, but suddenly it's what a world of developers are going to build on top.
Wow, what a journey. And it's amazing the unfortunate timing at the beginning, but it worked out in the end with the generative AI wave. Did you foresee that coming, or was that just right time and right place to take advantage of that?
I think it was more the latter. We'd been, I guess, to our credit, we'd always moved away from the, let's call it magic leap kind of definition of AR, which is still predominant today. It's heavy console grade graphics in front of your eyes and big bulky headsets, very expensive, oftentimes with a wire coming out of the back or some hip worn computing device to complement the bulky goggles. We always looked at that and we said, that can't be the future. That's a really expensive gondola ride to nowhere. And we were always obsessed with the notion of glasses that were just thin, affordable, totally open, beautifully designed, what glasses should be. And they allowed an AI to just peer into your life in a privacy protecting way and bring all sorts of intelligence to complement your own. We always felt like that was the more useful, more interesting set of use cases. And the beauty about that is you don't need console grade graphics in front of your eyes to do that. If anything, those are like those cakes with too much like chemically icing on top to overcompensate for the low quality of ingredients used in the cake. that's like AR, like how it's been defined to date. But for us, we're like, this can be just a lovely, very sparse UI, very simple, and it just feels like glasses. And when people look at you, it shouldn't feel much different than that. We've always been seeing this whole space a little bit differently. But to answer your question, we totally did not see the generative AI, all of what we're all seeing every single day. We didn't see that coming. I feel grateful that I'm living through it. It's fascinating.
Wow. Yeah, I always say it's such an exciting time to be alive. But I love that approach of keeping things simple and practical, whereas you don't see a lot of other AR companies doing that. Could you please give me a breakdown of how the glasses work? How do the physical components as well as the software like Noah cooperate together to create the experience that users encounter with Frame?
Yeah, absolutely. There's three nodes in the entire product architecture. You can think about it that way. So there's Frame itself, the glasses that you wear. There's your phone, and then there is Noah and all the AI stuff that sits up in the cloud. So Frame is a really essential, tightly integrated piece of hardware that brings a range of sensors, camera, microphone, display, an IMU to track your movement and acceleration, together with your phone. So we have a mobile app that sits on your phone, cross-platform, both iOS and Android, and they pair over Bluetooth. So anything that's captured on Frame is then piped over to your phone. Now the phone acts as a relay point. There isn't a ton that happens on the phone right now, aside from a companion app. The magic is really happening up in the cloud. And all of that data gets parsed and packaged and then sent up to Noah. And Noah's job chiefly is to route, to understand the intention of what's coming in, the prior context, and then to route that to the right model, whether that's GPT-4o, whether that's Perplexity, or something else. And so those are the three nodes in the network. But we always look at this as just the starting pistol. The genius really is how developers are going to hack and reconfigure that whole arrangement, even down to the hardware. We've got someone who's hacking the hardware directly and resoldering some of the flex to incorporate it into another peripheral. We love that. We think that's awesome. And we open source the hardware to make that possible as well. But I think most people, of course, they're going to tackle the software side. We've got developers that are changing where Noah points to or where the app points to. It'll be their own server. It'll have their own model fine-tuned on their own data. Some of those are enterprises. Some of those are individual developers with a bold, imaginative idea. And so that's really, if what we built is the starting pistol, we want to afford a lot of hacking and reconfiguration of that whole arrangement.
I love that ecosystem that you're enabling. Could you show the viewers Frame how the physical components are all organized together?
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Wow.
I'll
And
just
doesn't
move
that
my,
only weigh 40 grams?
yeah, it does. Yeah, it
That's
does. So
amazing. I was weighing my Ray-Bans earlier and they weigh more than that. And I was just thinking, how do you guys fit all those components into those beautiful glasses that, like, if you were wearing those in public, you wouldn't even realize that they were AR. Whereas
yeah,
like with the Google Glass, for instance, it was pretty obvious, or the Microsoft's old attempt at AR is very obvious. I'm amazed by how you're able to fit all those components into that tiny little frame.
yeah. And this is where having a very small team that can just be super nimble and creative to integrate across systems, this is where it comes in handy. We have camera and most of our electronics sitting in the nose bridge here, microphone as well, Bluetooth, IMU. So the main board is here. And then we have a display that sits recessed inside of this housing. It fires down into a geometric prism, which shines a holographic image into your eye. And then there's flex cabling that runs from that main board. It's over molded. So that's like a double injection molding process that we worked really hard with our factory for many months to do. So there's no seams in the arm. You can't crack it apart. It's just one integral piece. And that flex cable is over molded down to batteries, which sit just behind this polished steel cap. Yeah, we're pretty thrilled with what we've been able to produce here within a tight time frame. And we've got more to come. I think we'll be making some announcements in the next few months that people are going to get excited about.
Wow, that's amazing. I love to see that. Could you see down the road letting users opt into letting their data be used to fine tune personal AI models? I think it could be really cool to personalize the experience and could also add some utility to the glasses as well by understanding their routine or habits and maybe using RAG. They could upload their schedule or some relevant data that would help them out.
That's a really interesting question. It's something that we get asked a lot. And I think you can see that there's a lot of hum in the industry to move things in that direction. I think people are getting this collective sense, to your point, that, oh man, there could be so much utility for me if, in a privacy protecting way, I could trust uploading some of my essential, like you said, my schedule and some other elements of personal data so that there could be more useful recall for me to help me navigate life and make decisions. We're thinking about that for sure. We're trying to take a look to see what others are building. And we're always trying to balance this notion of, do we need to build this? Or is this something that others, whether it's a partner, whether it's someone from our developer community, whether it's another large company like Microsoft, are there folks out there building something like this that we could just point frame at, or customers
Mhm.
could point frame at, in which case we don't need to reinvent that wheel.
Mhm.
But we also try to dig in to understand, okay, if someone's building this, are they doing it in a way that respects people's privacy? Is it secure? Because that also matters a lot. We try to navigate the seeming paradox between being open source, but also being really respectful of people's data privacy, because both ought to be living in the same solution. There's no false trade off there. So, right now, we see a lot of people thinking about it. We don't hear a lot of people explicit about the privacy piece. And we do think that there are some benefits to be gained by integrating the underlying hardware with the software and AI that seek to do this. And being open means that anyone can integrate at that level, not just us. But it does mean that we have an opportunity, our team, to look at this from first principles all the way on up to the AI level. So, yeah, that's a roundabout way of saying that I think it's really compelling and we're definitely thinking hard about it.
Nice. Well, look forward to seeing where you guys move in that direction in the future and whether you adopt a solution that's made by your community or a third party like Microsoft. It shall be interesting to see. And I could see that adding a lot of utility and even improving the experience from there. Looking forward, how do you see technology evolving and Brilliant Labs evolving along with it?
That's a big question. In broad brushstrokes, we definitely see technology becoming more natural to your biology. And if anything, when I look at the onward march of technology and just how we've always instinctively crafted these things to live in our lives, it seems like we have unconsciously, like we collectively, have unconsciously considered these technology solutions, especially those that have some degree of intelligence, to be an extension of ourselves. And I've always found that interesting because that's going to shift at some point from what has to date been largely unconscious to, at some point, there will be this collective consciousness that as long as these things are designed thoughtfully with values, the right values embedded inside of them, and they respect people and they're open, they're worthy of our trust. So as long as those right values are embedded in their design, we are essentially designing an extension of ourselves, an extension of our humanity, like a third arm or a third eye. Maybe that's a better metaphor. And I look at the onward march of technology akin to building that extension of ourselves. And that means that we'll want it to have the sensors and the computability, but also just the interface and ergonomics all up and down the stack. We'll want it to feel like it's something that just inevitably belongs about my person. And it's just until such point that we don't need to think too much about it because of course, it's with me all the time. Of course, it sees and hears the world as I see and hear it. Why would it be any other way? And when you remove it from your life, you'd feel 600 IQ points dumber. and you'd be scrambling to put it back on, or it'd feel like your arm got lopped off, and you wouldn't, by choice, you wouldn't want that to happen. And so this is like very broad brush to your question. Like I've always seen technology in that way. And I think that's where we're headed. And that has implications for hardware, like for form factor and interface, but also for like software and interaction design. And we're excited to be a part of that journey, contributing to that in any way that we can.
It's an exciting time to be alive. I do see that already today a little bit. When people lose their cell phone, it is almost like they lost a piece of themselves, and the panic sits in immediately. So there's times where I'll leave my phone and I'll be checking my pocket and I'll realize, oh wait, I don't have it with me. And it's just like an unconscious habit because it is an extension of myself. But yeah, that is a fascinating vision that you have for the future. And I'm excited to see how Brilliant Labs plays a part in that role with shaping technology moving forward. And one area I find fascinating is neurotechnology. Do you see Brilliant Labs potentially leveraging this technology in the future to enable people to interact with AR environments simply by just thinking, or movements such as wrist gestures?
Absolutely. This is one of the key confounding questions for this type of product in our lives, which is, what is the most unobtrusive way of interacting with it in all settings? Because voice is really useful, but if you're like in an elevator, you don't want to be speaking out loud to your device. There's just all these moments where you'd want to get utility from this thing, be voice or gesture. It's just not the thing. And yeah, the obvious sort of end conclusion there is, I think, a tip of the hat to Elon Musk. He saw down the road, and I think he's been making a bet in this space for a while now. And there's a lot of companies working in this. We're absolutely thinking about ways to interface with a device like this. There's a company, for example, that is doing a technology that just detects the very subtle movements of the mouth. So you could just be whispering what you want to say without actually speaking it out loud. And it will pick up what you were trying to say. It'll transcribe that into text and then send that off as your query. So there's all kinds. And then, of course, you mentioned things on the wrist, Neuralink, things embedded in the brain. And there's some that we've seen, really cool stuff that it's non-surgical, it's non-invasive, it's in like an earbud. And so you can put that in an ear, but you could also embed that in the temple of glasses. And so there's a lot of stuff converging in this space. And so we're talking to folks, and a bunch of them are frame customers as well. So they're experimenting to see the intersection of what they've built and what we've built. Yeah, we want to see how this shakes out the next couple of years.
Awesome. That'd be really exciting to see. The closer we merge with technology, I think our lives will improve and society will benefit from it as well. One question I want to ask is, what traits do you believe are most crucial for success for someone on a similar path as you?
Oh, man. What traits? This is a roundabout way of answering the question, but my kids and I, we love going climbing, rock climbing. And my kids are young. And so what I tell them every time we go is that rock climbing is so much fun, in part because you fall down so much, but you learn the value of getting right back up and getting back on that wall. So that when you do scale the wall, it's that much sweeter. You can look back on the journey of just how many times you've got back on your feet and tried. And it's like a very dad thing to tell their kids, but it's true. And I feel like that's analogous to the journey of not just being a founder, but just life. It's inevitable. This journey of life, it knocks you on your butt over and over again in so many different ways. And it really is not about what we achieve. That's so not the point of life. The point of life really, and I do believe this in a spiritual sense, the point of life is how often we get back on our feet and just try. And then one day we die. And depending on your spiritual beliefs, there's a whole story after that. But at least in this physical world that we're all co-inhabiting together, the point is just how often you get back on your feet and just keep trying. And my advice to someone who's trying to walk a similar path or start a company or just invent something novel that just is of positive effect, hopefully, for the human race. Number one, consider the values that are most often unconsciously embedded in what we design. I think values really matter. And there's not enough discourse around the values embedded in what we do as designers, as inventors. But the other one is just get back on your feet constantly. At this point, there's so much ink spilled about all the things that can go wrong. in the founder journey, from people challenges, people in team, to how hard it is to raise capital, to product development challenges, to market. Like, all of this stuff is written about and is being written about. And it's great. But to me, I want to take a step back. And like, to your question, I just want to say, you're going to fall on your butt multiple times a day across all of these different things. And it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. That should be celebrated. What matters is that you get back on your feet and you try again. So that's, I think, my chief piece of advice to anyone trying to walk this path.
Definitely. You have to be relentlessly resourceful and don't quit and see adversity as just a lesson to learn. And as you said with values, it's important to have them prioritized and be aware of what your values are, because they should be directing you as you go along. A lot of times people will confuse opinions for values, and that's a dangerous mistake that you don't want to make. So it's very important to have your values and keep those written in stone while you keep your opinions written in sand, as they say.
Yeah. To add one thing to that too, because we do try to think a lot about this as a team, and there's this thing called unforeseen consequences, right? All of us know this. And we, at the top, when we're designing something, we could try to do it with great intentions and pure motives and have good values embedded in terms of what we intend to achieve with this. But then it's after you release it and you give it to others and how that begins to pan out in the world. Oftentimes there's a gap between what you intended at the top and how it's actually panning out in practice. So that's the other sort of full circle element of this, is having a system in place as a team within oneself, but also as a team, to be able to, like anthropologists do, ethnographic observation. Like they observe, they interview, and they try to understand not just what people say, but what people actually do, observed behavior. And so doing that with your own product and how people use it and the unintended consequences of that, I think that's the other side of this. And then baking that back in to how you do the next product, how you continue designing or course correcting. So I think values, it's a living, breathing thing that we take from the practice as well as the design.
Definitely. You have to be self-correcting, because a lot of times, even if your intentions are golden, the outcome is not going to perfectly align with them. And you have to anticipate the unexpected and pivot and self-correct from there. I wanted to ask a question about reading, because reading is a passion of mine. So I must ask, is there a book or author that has had a big impact on your life? Or is there a book that you often reread because of the value it provides?
Oh, yeah. It's kind of cliche for me to say this one, but Clay Christensen's book on disruption, I think that's a classic must read for anyone working in technology. But these days, every company is becoming a technology company in some shape or form. And so I feel like everyone working in any industry, whether it's explicitly technology or not, ought to read The Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen. This is a slight variant. Something that I get a ton of consistent insights and value from is actually Ben Thompson's weekly newsletter, Stratechery. Famously poorly named. It's a concatenation of strategy and technology, Stratechery. But for those who don't know, look him up. Ben Thompson, Stratechery. It's $100 a year or something. And it's made me so much smarter just reading that. He publishes a couple times a week. He brings on amazing guests. And he really digs deep below the surface of the technology headlines and the announcements. And he tries to understand, he tries to give you a deeper understanding in terms of how things work, but also why. And I've gotten so much value, ongoing value from that. So that'd be one that I point folks to.
Okay, awesome. I'm going to subscribe to that newsletter. And Innovator's Dilemma is also a book I've gotten a lot of value out of. Thank you for mentioning that. I really appreciate that. I love to read variety of topics far and wide, because I feel like that helps me have a more well-rounded perspective. So I really appreciate that. It was great having you on, Bobak. For people to keep up with Brilliant Labs, the website is brilliant.xyz. I'll make sure to put that in the description, and I highly recommend checking out their Discord community. It's a great place to see what people are building with Frame and see updates from the company. Bobak, is there anything else we should mention to help people follow your journey with Brilliant Labs?
I think you've done a great job of spelling it out. Brilliant.xyz. Check us out there. We've got a Discord. We're on all the usual socials. and stay tuned. We've got some exciting stuff to announce in the coming months.
Awesome. I'm excited for those announcements that are on the way, and I really appreciate you coming on the show. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Nolan.